Hey, it's Ben. What we're going to talk about in this session is the big uncommit, raising your floor. It's one of the most critical steps that you're going to take when going 10x. Now, most people think that they won't hit a 10x goal because the goal itself is hard, difficult, it's challenging. I don't believe that. I believe that the reason that you're not going to hit a 10x goal is because of paths to lesser goals. They're standards, they are commitments, they are partnerships, they're pathways that are taking you to your 10x goal. Now, what I want to talk about is not just the concept and thinking around this, so really sell you the idea of raising your floor, the big uncommitment that you're going to take place or take part in, but also how to go about doing it, the pragmatic steps to go about doing it, some of the thinking systems and strategies I use with my clients. And honestly, if you need help with this, just reach out. This is probably one of the most imperative steps in the tech process where you probably need a coach. You need someone to help you. You need some critical thinking. You need some challenge around this, because it's often the things we're often protecting that are the things that we need to uncommit to, remove, raise the floor on. So I love this quote, which is, perfection is achieved not when there is nothing to add, but when there is nothing more to take away. And this is that process, is that we if you look at some of the most successful people who have led companies, who have built companies, who've gone on 10x, they have often gone in and stripped out all the things that are just not selling, working, that are not growing, that are not pushing the company forward. The great example of this is Steve Jobs, as he went back into Apple and he removed many of the product lines, and then he turned the company around and they made a 300 million profit from huge losses within a year. Now, that's because he removed things that weren't working. He actually removed the pathways to lesser goals, to products that just weren't the company's image or the company's vision. And what you've got to think about is yourself like that. There's things in your personal life and your business life that are perhaps commitments, they're perhaps partnerships, they're even platforms that you're going on every single day that have no value in your future. And this is what I believe is the biggest obstacle. It was the biggest obstacle for me. There was so many commitments in my life that I'd made, and because I hadn't aggressively uncommitted to these things, they were still stealing valuable time, energy, bandwidth, money, capital, whatever you want to call it, that was stopping me from going all in on my next goals. Now, when you start to think like this, it's quite magical, because I can imagine you're listening to this podcast and you're trying to grow, you're trying to transform, you're trying to build your business. You've got a limited amount of energy in the day. If you think about this, you've got a limited amount of energy, you've got a limited amount of time in the day. If you're trying to carry all of this other stuff, that's stealing your bandwidth, stealing your energy, all these time commitments, these relationships you've got to contribute to, if you're not uncommitting to them, you can't pull them into the future every single day. And what this process is letting go of so much of that stuff so that you can climb. Now, I think that a process that you need to develop for this is to constantly or continually re-audit your P's. And we're going to dive into that a little bit later in the session, because I think that I got 15 P's that I can whip through that have helped me go, actually, where do I need to go and transform this? And it's not that I use 15 every single quarter, but it's just that there's 1, 2, or 3 things that I need to pay attention to. And so this is the first actual request, is like, think about 3, maybe 2 areas in your business right now where you've got some struggles or challenges. It could be with your positioning, that you're positioning yourself in front of a low level marketplace. It could be that you are really trying to be the cheapest out there when you were trying to be the best quality product. It could be that your team is not effective and not efficient, and you're trying to move them forward and you feel heavy right now. You might feel that you've got too many team members. What is the challenge that you're currently going through? Even feel free to pause this session and write that down, because that might help you really contextualize what we're talking about as we move through the next couple of minutes. So here's the problem that we have, is that we have a domain where we're struggling, and then we have a floor for that. Now, this could be something like your presence, your focus. One of the things that often people struggle with is that they wake up and their habit or their presence is gone, it goes straight into the phone. It's straight into other people's business, other people's lives, other people's wins, other people's drama. And if you think about this, you move straight out off the pillow, thinking about yourself straight into somebody else's life that you have no impact or no influence over. So one of the big flaws that you can raise is actually saying no to anybody else's life or anyone else's drama before a certain time of the day. That was a flaw I raised probably last year, and I'm continually improving that I create before I react. So I'm doing this podcast now. It's 11:24, and I want to make sure that's finished before 12, where I go into serving clients. Living in Dubai was a great thing because most of my US and Canadian and American and English clients don't come online until the latter half of my day. So create before react. And that was a really big flaw for me, because what I would do is I often get into emails, get onto these like reactive states, and then creation would take a back seat. So what I did is I was like, I'm going to actually have a structured AM routine where I train. We're with the kids. We make sure they have a really nice, slow, calm morning. They go to nursery. I meet with Poppy. And what that really helps you do, it starts to help you raise the standard, not just on your nervous system, but how you orient to your day. So the problem you might be experiencing is your attention is fractured from the moment you lift your head off the pillow. It's fractured in multiple directions. So when it comes to really focusing on the 1 to 3 things that you have to do that day, it's already moving in 10, 20 different directions. This allows you to slow right down. And how does your 10x self make this irrelevant? He or she creates a structured morning routine. So that's raising a floor. So you're uncommitting to checking other people's wants, desires, needs before your own. You're checking in with yourself. And now what I do now, I open my momentum app, I write a win for the day. Already I've probably experienced it early in the morning, and I've already started to build some personal momentum. I'm checking on my projects, I'm getting my things going, and that has been a game changer for me. There's many of these, and I'm going to give you 1 or 2 examples, because that will then help you when it comes to auditing your own. Another one can be projects. So projects are, if you're a creative or you're running a business, you want to move out from business delivery to project mindset, where you have campaigns or projects which have start and end dates. Now, when I changed my gym from a campaign, so from a reactive based system, when I just did random projects at random times, random programs, they started and they never really finished. And when I actually created a campaign calendar, what I noticed is that I was far more campaign and project oriented. And this is where we said, here's the start date, and this is when that campaign needs to finish. And that transformed the way that I led the company. Now, if you're constantly firing off different offers, firing off different projects, firing off different programs, creating arbitrary deadlines way off in the future, you're going to be absolute chaos as a leader. It's going to be really difficult to work around you for your team. And it's also unclear for your customers as well. So what actually happens is, if you raise the floor on this, you say, hang on a second, if I actually want to be a really great leader, I want to be slow and impactful, and the word for it is not decisive, it's intentional. It means that I'm going to put one project that is really key, and I have a start and an end date. I'm going to ship it. I'm going to make sure it actually is out there. And raising that floor, saying that I'm no longer going to be reactive, is really, really helpful and helps you enormously. And the final one I want to talk about is people. This is probably the most difficult one. There's either 1 to 3 relationships in your life that are slowing you down, stopping you, blocking you, aren't productive, aren't effective, or are actually really hampering your personal progress. This can be your significant other. This can be a relationship with a friend, a family member. This can be a person in your workplace. This can be a customer or a client. This can be a vendor. the circle can grow. But honestly, when you get really clear on who that person is and either eradicate them, elevate them, or improve that relationship so that it's actually a +1 relationship instead of a -1 relationship, that is when you see massive shifts. I've noticed this in the past. To give you an example, when I led a coaching program, I think it was like 4 years ago, and a person joined and they just really weren't a fit for that program. And they caused so many problems in that program, like so many. We had people leave, they didn't re-sign because that person was in that program. So that cost me about £70,000 in re-signs alone. We had 7 people paying $10,000 a year who didn't want to re-sign because that person was in the program, and that is the cost of one person. That was a cost having one person in that program. So it's really important to understand that that one person can be so costly. Equally, is actually transforming that. It's like, actually, can you turn those relationships around? And this is not me saying that you should go out and cull anyone who's frustrating in your life. This is actually looking at, well, how do I actually make sure that in my social circle or in my business circle or in my clients, in my community, I've got the right people. And it's having a critical lens around that. It's being decisive, saying, actually, this person doesn't fit in my 10x future or my business's 10x future, and doing the courageous thing and the kind thing and getting rid of them. Honestly, that's something that I really believe. I ran a huge community in the gym, and that was a huge part of it. When someone was there that caused problems, I always, on the other side of asking them to leave, told myself I should have done that way, way, way long ago. I should have done it way, way sooner. I didn't listen to my gut. I tried to remedy the relationship, or tried to pacify the person or the people around them, and it was always way more detrimental in the longer it went on. So really be clear on that one, especially in your team. If you're in a team, these people really are not a fit. They upset everyone else. They're not effective. They don't follow the way that you want to build your business. They need removing. So what I want to do is pump the brakes a second and ask you to answer this question. Which 3 problems are costing you the most in personal momentum right now, or business momentum? So what are they? Is it about someone in the team? Is it that you're paying attention to a client that's causing you way more stress and strife than needs to be? Is there a process that's really not helpful? It's cumbersome and it's slowing you down. Is there a marketing effort that's just not working? What is costing you the most in personal momentum right now? If you need help exploring that and finding answers and finding solutions, feel free to click the link in this bio for this podcast, and it's got a 10x scorecard. Fill out that scorecard, and I'll help you also move forwards with taking action on that. There's also a link to my email. You can email me, get help at any time. Honestly, I really want to help you if this is something you struggle with. So let's go back to those 3 things that are most problematic for you right now. And what we want to think of is, like, how can we raise the floor? How can we raise your floor so that those problems don't even exist anymore? Now, that's something that's going to really depend on your 10x goal. So previous to this podcast and in another podcast, I've talked a lot about setting 10x goals. But when you set your 10x goal, what automatically happens is it forces you to raise that floor. It forces you to say, I'm going to remove these pathways, these projects, these people that don't align with that image or that future or that 10x goal. And so these things have to work together. So what you want to do is write the domain that it's in, the problem that you're experiencing, and how your 10x future self solves that problem. So that might look like, problem right now is my offer. I'm selling one-on-one random sessions, one-off, and it's not helping my cash flow. My 10x future self sells bigger packages that are a year long. They're committed. I have good cash flow. So that's how we raise that floor. We take it from one-on-one, random, ad hoc sessions to sessions in the calendar, a subscription-based business. That's how you would shift that. So what I want to finish with, and I don't want to, this is where you could probably stop the podcast or the training and go off and take action. Like, honestly, that's what I believe. I think the the value of this, what you've just listened to, is not in what I've shared, it's about how much action you take. But I want to go a little bit deeper, and I've created like a 15P framework that allows you to easily audit everything that you need to in order to make sure you've got a really, really good visibility on the things that you need to get rid of. And I'm going to go through a few, but if you want the document that has all of this in, feel free to just nip below, click my email, and just write the word document to me, and I'll send you this audit sheet, because the audit sheet will help you enormously. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'll put a link to it so you can just get the document straight away. Let's save any what are they called? Any resistance, what's the word for it? Any unnecessary steps. So when you go into a deeper auditing process, you want to look at all of the P's. It actually just turns out that it fits very, very nicely. And here's one of the promises. Promises are a really important part of auditing, because you might have made promises as a past self that you're still trying to honor as your future self, and they just don't fit. But one of the problems you might have had is that you must fulfill all your promises. You must come good on your word. And absolutely, there is so much to be said about that. There's also cleaning up your commitments. Now, what this can sometimes look like is that you've made a commitment, you've absolutely maybe upheld that commitment. You could have upheld that commitment for years, but it no longer fits in a future. Now, I was speaking to a client a couple of months ago, and he had committed to taking his son's football team like 3 times a week. It was a really big commitment. 3 times a week was huge. It was like had to finish work at 4 p.m. every single day and go and work with his kids' football team. And it was a commitment that he upheld to this point. But the problem was it was starting to impact on the goals that he had for himself and his business. So what he had to do, he had to clean up that commitment. He could no longer uphold that commitment of 3. It was a non-negotiable minimum of 1. And that 1 was everything that really mattered to him. He still wanted to do the training, but he had to just clean up that commitment. And that's the thing. It's a promise that he made. He wanted to do 3 times a week. He saw himself doing 3 times a week. He did it for, I think it was like 5 or 6 years. And then it wasn't working anymore because his life had changed. His goals had changed. So he had to go and clean up that commitment. So what he did is he went and got 2 other coaches. He said, listen, I've been doing the three coaching sessions with the kids' football for years now. Would you be able to take 1 each? And the other 2 people jumped at the opportunity. So sometimes we are hanging on to old promises and old commitments, sometimes on our own, where we actually need to delegate and actually leverage the people around us. And think about if that's happening in your team. You might have promised your team that you and you alone will do something for a certain amount of time, but it's okay to come back to them and clearly communicate the change in that commitment. And that's the difference. This is an interesting one, actually, paradigms. What paradigm no longer serves you? Now, my paradigm is I am on this side sometimes as well, a farmer. I would measure my self-worth by how much I'd done, how hard I'd worked, how many hours I'd put in. How valuable that was dependent on like me being in the gym from 5 a.m. in the morning till 7 p.m. at night. And then I burnt out. I really burnt out towards my early 30s, and I realized that I'd hung on to this farmer mindset where people valued me for working hard. Well, actually, they didn't. They valued me for how much I could help them transform. What was the least I could do to get them to do the most? I would say that the smallest wand wave to make the biggest spell happen. And that paradigm shift was really helpful for me because, actually, I can work hard, and I think working long hours is not what I'm trying to. I'm trying to help you shift here. It's actually about being ineffective with those hours. Now, me taking a fitness session or doing a one-on-one coaching session is very effective. It makes a shift for that person. But me leading a team of coaches, 10, 20, 30 coaches who go out and then change 30 to 100 lives is way more effective. I might give 3 hours to both endeavors, But me directly to the customer could change 30 to 50 to 100 lives at best. Me to working with my team who would go out and change hundreds of lives, way better leverage. That's the magician. That's the farmer. I'd rather be the magician. That paradigm shift was a huge flaw for me. I'm no longer going to do things when I'm just one-on-one with a client. I realized I actually couldn't charge enough for personal training to be effective as if I was one-to-many via a trainer as well. So I would actually be able to have a ripple effect like 350 to 500 people versus one-on-one. The final one I want to talk about in this 15p audit, which you can get in the link, is payments. Where are you allocating your money? And this was something that really, I'm probably going through it again now, is actually auditing where am I paying for things that are as either dumb taxes, my actual organization and my actual planning is what's causing me to have to spend so much money, or am I investing in my future self, or is it in my current self? And I was actually listening to this the other day, is that we're either borrowing from our future self or we're paying into it. And as I heard it, as one of these moments, I have them quite often, I stop my run, I walk, I re-listen to that moment again and again and again and again. And the flaw for me is I'm going to stop borrowing from my future self. I'm going to invest in my future self. So if I'm to take out a credit card, not all credit's bad, and I'm not trying to discourage anyone using credit, but if I take out a credit card and I borrow it in a huge amount of money from my future self, the problem is that I've got to make sure I'm doing the leveraged work in the moment to make sure I can pay it back. So many people borrow from their future self and then they don't get the value back in the present. So you can either invest in your future self or you can borrow from it. Every time I go and take drugs or drink or party up late into the night, I'm stealing energy and stealing happiness from the following 2, 3, 4, 5 days and bringing it into that moment. I'm stealing from my future self. So many of those patterns and behaviors, if you want to achieve your 10x goal, have to go. So that's where those audits come in. There's 15 of. So you can reach out for those for that audit and in the comments below. And I want you to think about that. How can you aggressively uncommit and raise your floor so that it's so much easier for you to go 10x this year? Thank you so much for watching the video. Please like, comment if something's really resonated with you, and subscribe to the channel. Take care.